Hi, I'm Brad Burrow.
And I'm David Jackson.
And this is the Digital Disruptors podcast. So thanks for joining us today. Is our initial inaugural podcast. And, I'm really excited about this podcast, David, because I think that there are a lot of people out there that don't really understand digital marketing, especially in small business world.
Yes.
The people that are really experts in digital marketing are working for the big corporations and that type of thing. But in small business world, especially in services and products and stuff like that, people just don't understand digital marketing.
That's true. And they really have no idea where to even start or grow their digital marketing. There's just so much information out there that it can be confusing.
Yeah. And so I think what's happening a lot is small companies are throwing money in places that really don't make sense and it doesn't work.
That's true. That's true. People are investing into strategies that worked fine even 1 or 2 years ago, but Google has changed so much. The algorithms change all of the time. And also just customer and consumer expectations have changed too. And unfortunately, there are a lot of tactics and strategies that just haven't kept up with it. And so it's great to be able to sit here with you and provide clarity on what businesses should expect going forward.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really want to get into. And let's talk about that later in the podcast, because I want to talk about how the way you sell is completely different even than 2 years ago.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And, with Real Media, we've been in business 27 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that we sold our services, that far back is completely different than it is now.
Yeah.
And, it's a little scary for a business owner. You're sitting there like, what do I do?
Yeah. We've all been there.
You wake up in the middle of the night and have that notepad next to you. I better call David.
Yeah.
So let's start out by giving the listeners a little bit of background. Tell me a little bit about your background. How'd you get started in this?
Yeah. So again, David Jackson here. I started my company, which is called Tekkii, about 9 years ago, just about 9.5 years ago now. And it's funny, I just started it in my apartment. I quit my previous job, which was in retail, and I decided to build a website. It's pretty funny how I fell into it. My roommate at the time, he went to go work for this printing company, and he came home one day and he said, "Hey, these guys need a website. Is that something you can do?" And I had dabbled in websites. I've always been into computers. I've been into computers since I was about 9 years old. And I said, "Yeah, I think I can do this for them." So we drive out there. I give them the worst pitch of my life. Had no idea what I was doing or saying. But oddly enough,
yeah, I can do a website.
yeah. I mean, it was really like that. But I did believe that I'd be able to figure it out for him. And it was funny. The same day, first time I met this guy, he goes, "Well, how much is it going to cost?" And I thought, "Oh, I have no idea." I had no clue.
Yeah.
But I told him a price. It was pretty low at the time, but I told him a price and he said, "Okay, sounds good." And he wrote me a check for 1/3 of that amount right then and there. First time I ever met him. And I just thought, wow, this is it. This is the thing that I'm going to do. This is the direction I'm going to go. So that whole first year, you eat dirt, you learn, you grow. But
just the first year?
Well, no, it continues. It continues on. You're right about that.
Yeah.
But a lot of learning, a lot of growth, and we finished that project. And then he referred us to another person. They referred us to someone else. One thing after another, and we just continued to grow over the years until we were where we are now. So, I mean, yeah, I'm very grateful, very blessed to be in this position. But yeah, that's some of my background. And of course, there's a ton of stories, a ton of experiences that I've had, but it's truly been remarkable.
When did you realize you had an aptitude for this? I mean, because I think what I believe, like we're kind of on the creative side, storytelling and video and all that stuff. There's a different aptitude, but you're in, kind of diving into algorithms and, keywords, all the things, and, website development, obviously. But
Yes.
When did you realize you had an aptitude for that?
So I believe I realized it before I even started doing it, because even as a kid, one thing that I really enjoyed doing was when I did something that I enjoyed, I thought, you know what, I'd like to do this myself. So it started with video games. I'd play a really fun video game, and then I would think, you know, I'd like to make my own video game. And so everything that was involved in that, which was extremely detailed, I would really get into the weeds of how to do it because I wanted that end result and I wanted it to be really good. Same thing with music. I played a game called Guitar Hero.
Oh, yeah.
And I discovered so much music through that I had never heard before. And I thought, this is really good. I'd like to make my own music. So I learned how to play the guitar. And I really took it to the level of being able to write some pretty good music because I wanted that end result. And so that has all just translated itself into what we do now, which is website design, SEO, pay-per-click. I wanted to be really good at it, and I wanted the end result to be the business we're helping will grow. They'll increase their revenue, they'll increase the number of employees, the number of trucks, whatever it may be. And so I just really sank myself into the details of getting that end result, which is their growth and that business's impact.
Yeah, that's awesome. Didn't know you were a musician. I learned something today.
Yeah.
In the other room in there, I've got 3 or 4 guitar amps, a bunch of guitars.
Yeah, we'll have to jam. I'd consider myself to be pretty good. I was actually in a band. We made it on the radio a few times. It was,
no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whole different life.
Yeah,
Whole different
awesome.
life.
Well, we are in a recording studio, people, if you're looking. So
Yeah.
we could do it. So
Really nice studio.
thank you. So let me tell you, that's a good transition to Real Media. Let me tell you a little bit about Real Media. The folks that are listening, we've been in business since '97. I was a full-time musician, and that's how I got into the creative side of things, doing albums and trying to get signed and all that stuff.
Really cool.
Decided I wanted to make money, so I started a video production company. You know, I was tired of eating at White Castle every night at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But so we've been around for a long time. We started in sports doing, animation. I worked for the Chiefs actually, and we did animation and graphics. And then next thing you know, we're working with, teams all over the country. And so we did that for many years. And then I bought this building in 2009.
Yes.
And, have just kind of evolved. And today we're a full service media production company. And I say that meaning that we can really create and deliver content, video content on pretty much any medium. So it could be a podcast like we're doing here. It could be a live stream event. It can be a TV spot. We're shooting with Red cameras, very high end, cinematic footage. We're working on a documentary on the history of women's basketball right now. That's going to be probably on Netflix or someplace like that. It's a docu-series. We've shot 130 interviews for that, roughly, all 6K. Wow. Really, really high end. We've got a recording studio, great staff that is able to use all these amazing tools, and then experience. So, why we're really interested in being a part of this podcast is because video content has become more and more important for every business.
Yes.
And if a lot of people are trying to do it, thinking, well, I'm just going to use my phone and do something, and that's the video content, and that's not really the right approach. So we've become very good at the strategy side of the video content, and when you couple that with what you and your team are really good at, that's a pretty unstoppable combination.
That's right.
So transitioning, that's why we started the podcast. So tell me what your thoughts were. Why do a podcast?
Yeah, so it goes back to what we were saying a bit earlier in that everyone knows that they need to be online. Everyone knows they need to have a very strong online presence. And I think more and more people are understanding that just building your business based on referrals isn't going to get you to the level that you ideally want to be at. You have to be online.
Yeah.
And the second problem is people just don't know where to start. They're thinking, okay, do I start blogging? Do I start a YouTube channel? Do I start, trying to be an influencer? Do I hire this person to run Google ads? There's just so many different tactics out there. And there's actually a path that we're going to talk about on this podcast that I believe that businesses should follow when it comes to trying to grow their presence online. But The reason for starting this podcast is to help provide that guidance and understanding on what you should do next and why it's important. We really seek to empower businesses with that education and understanding so that they can make sense of all of the noise that's coming from every direction.
Right. And I think people are, especially small business owners, 5 million in revenue to maybe 20 million in revenue.
Yeah.
They're overwhelmed by all of this.
Yes.
I know I am. I'm not at that level, but it's overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
like, what do I do?
People are contacting you all the time. You see these young 20-something-year-old kids guaranteeing that you can get like 50 calls in 1 week consistently. And it's just, there's so much noise coming from every direction. What do you do?
Yeah. AI's even making that worse in some ways.
Oh yeah. There's a lot to keep up with. So it's I feel great being able to be a part of something with you that's going to help bring that clarity to these business owners to help them understand how to take back control of their business by way of marketing. I think a lot of people, even they may be in a contract now with an agency or something, but they don't really control that. They have no idea, and then they're beholden and they feel like they're handcuffed to that. So we're trying to help them take back control and just make sense of it all.
Let's talk about, I think the modern landscape of digital marketing, man, it's changing every day.
It is.
But I think if I was going to say, what could this podcast do? It's going to help people kind of get clarity on, okay, this is out of all the stuff, and there's lots, all the stuff. Here are the key things that you have to do.
Yes.
That maybe you venture off or, maybe you do something different, but you have to have this path that we're going to show. This is what you have to do to have success on that path. That's what I would love the podcast to do, is help business owners say, okay, I heard that. I need to, my website's not good, or maybe I need to do this, or maybe I need to do this. Here's a place where I'm lacking. But we can get them moving in the right direction, then we've been successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty of stories that are happening almost every week now of, talking to business owners, talking to different people that will approach us and approach you as well, that just have these different problems and, how we've solved them in the past and then what we see. We're always building up that list of stories. And I think that's one of the most powerful things is just storytelling. Like if you have an issue in your business, it's likely that someone has already solved it. And it's likely that there's a lot to learn from those things. And so if we can help prevent you from making the same mistake, that's the goal. That is the goal.
Yeah, that's great. So we would love for people to subscribe to this. We're not looking for anything in return. We're just wanting to help people and get people information and learn some of the things that we've learned the hard way.
Yeah,
honestly,
definitely.
over the years. And it always, I always refer back to Zig Ziglar. I don't know if you remember who that is, David, but he's a motivational speaker, and I got to interview him one day.
Oh, very cool.
And he's really, really full of wisdom, really smart guy. But he said one of the things that stuck with me all this time is, like, if you can help somebody else be successful, you'll be successful.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's kind of my heart on the podcast. We all want to grow our businesses, but if we can help other people, learn the best practices when it comes to digital marketing, we've done some good things to help people.
Yeah. It's all about the impact. Like, I believe that a small business succeeding online is really paramount to their impact that they leave on the community in a positive way. I think that when a business is successful online, not only will they grow, but they're going to help their employees grow. That's going to help their families. They're going to be able to service their community the proper way. It's going to help solve their problems. They're going to be able to, donate to charity events. They're going to be able to just really it just makes the community stronger. And that's just where things have shifted. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this.
So shift gears a little bit. What does the modern landscape for digital marketing look like? And I can kind of comment on that from a video standpoint, but from your standpoint in the digital world, and there's so much stuff out there. Just give me a kind of a 30,000 foot look at what that looks like.
Yeah. So the consumers, like customers out there, the modern customer, so to speak, as we mentioned before, the way that they make purchasing decisions is very, very different, and it's changing. More and more people are going this way every day, and so businesses really need to pivot. Really, what it comes down to is customers now have access to so much information, and they're being bombarded with this information just like we are. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on YouTube, and they're going there to solve their problems somewhat, or at least learn more about their problem. So let's say that there's someone and they need a new garage door installed. They're probably going to do some research before they even get close to making the decision.
Mm-hmm.
So this happening over the course of days, weeks, even months, it's building an expectation in their head on how they want it to go. And so business owners today need to make sure that they are meeting or at least coming close to that expectation that they're building. So if your website is not up to par, if you don't have any video content, if the words on your page are just not very good, if the design's not good, they're not going to trust it. And they're not going to trust that you can deliver on what their expectation is. And so that's what the landscape looks like today. And that goes even further beyond a lot of the technical aspects, and that's why and we don't have to get into all of those details now because I can talk about that forever.
Yeah.
But a lot of the technical SEO aspects like backlinks and all of the schema and all this stuff, it's not as important anymore, because at the end of the day, you just have to be the result they expect and the result they want, and build the trust and provide the authenticity they're looking for. They just need to know, can this person fulfill my expectation? So that's what the landscape looks like. But of course, that breaks down into a lot of tiny pieces that we'll be going into.
Yeah. When you talk about, that expectation, I want to dive into that just a little bit more. What is building that expectation? So, and the reason I ask that is, I hear this sometimes is like, people that have found us, go to our website and they're like, oh, I know you guys can handle what I'm trying to do. And they see the cameras, the studio and all that stuff. But they've probably subconsciously built an expectation that they didn't even know was being built by looking at other things on the landscape. That's got to be happening with roofing companies, with plumbing companies, all of the kind of those types of companies.
Yeah.
How can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, everything they look at is building that.
It is, absolutely. It starts with the problem or an awareness of what they need to get done. And so, for instance, my roof we just had a really bad storm, and I need to start considering how to fix it. So they're going to be looking up things like, okay, what's the best tile that I should use on my roof? And that's very high in the funnel, but they're looking at it and they're going, okay, well, I've read that this was a good tile to use, or I read that this was a good tile. And then they start getting down there, maybe when's the best time? How much does it cost? What's going on? So they're getting into the details more and more and more. But again, they're kind of painting a picture of, my roof is going to look just like this when I'm done, and it's going to last for this long. If anything bad happens, I'm going to have this coverage. So they're really building that up. And that's the type of customer you want, the customer that knows what they want and also has an idea of what they're going to pay, because they're essentially selling themselves. And they can do that now because the content out there is educating them, like the TikTok, the Instagram, that's all educating them, and Google. And so that customer, when they get down to finding you really have to bring your A game online, because that's going to be more than likely the first interaction that they have with your company. They're going to search and they're going to look at the results. What are the reviews looking like? If you don't have any reviews or they're bad, they're going to skip you. Okay, what does their website look like? What does this video look like? The video is showing them this is the experience you're going to have.
Yeah.
And you're painting that picture. And then when they see all of that, if you can match the expectation that they've built in their head, you're going to get a 5-star review. They're going to refer you. They're going to be a loyal customer, because there's anxiety along with that expectation. they're thinking, oh man, I'm going to spend a lot of money and I don't know how this is going to go. But you're bringing those walls down when you set up your website and your video content and the design and everything in that way. So you bring that anxiety down and then you do a slam dunk for them. That customer will love you forever. They're going to remember you.
And then you get the reviews and it just starts snowballing a little bit.
Yeah. So you have to approach digital marketing in that respect, especially if you're a small business.
And one of the things, there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I think that I want to just hit on briefly here.
Yeah.
And these will probably be topics of the podcast later.
Yes.
But trust.
Yes.
Building trust. I mean, how can, a skeptic's going to say, how can I build trust with a website and a video? I mean, that seems like a legitimate question. But what would you say to that?
Well, video is truly the strongest way to do that. I mean, people do get a perception. I may be misquoting the stat, but I think they say it's like half a second is all it takes for a person to make a judgment about your entire business based on the website. They land there and they just immediately, oh, this is not legitimate, or this looks cheap. And it's, even if a customer is not directly thinking it, they will attribute the website's design or your reviews or whatever to the care that you're putting into their experience before they even reach out.
Yeah.
And so, hey, do they care about my perception of their company? It doesn't look like it. So I don't think they're going to care about the work that they do either. And that may not be true, but that's how people think.
Perception is reality, right?
Yeah, that's how people think. So, and then getting into the video side of things, the video is the best way to communicate online, period. I mean, it is the best way to communicate. They get to see your team. They get to see your process. They get to see who you are. They get to hear your voice. And they already know you. And so that's going to warm people up to you so much faster than it's the best sales tool you can have. Like when someone calls you, you have to, okay, let me get to know this person. Do I want to work with them? Do I want to, if they've seen a video, all of those questions get answered.
Yeah.
And then they just call you and say, oh, I'm ready to go. I already know who you are. I know what you do. I saw this. The reviews are good. Let's do it.
You're hired, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
But that's very true. That's the power of video. There's one person said that in 1 second of video, there's a million words.
Yeah.
Because our minds are just taking in so many things. When they see, we learn.
Yeah.
And so that's the power of it. You just described it. I mean, that's really important. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, two more things, and then we'll wrap this podcast up. But do people read? I see websites specifically, blogs and all that stuff with lots of copy. Mm-hmm. And I rarely, unless I'm really, really locked in on something, or I want to learn a specific thing about a product or service, I don't read the websites.
Yeah, it's so hilarious because, and that's why this podcast is important, because these changes are very recent. As much as 2 years ago, we used to be able to write a blog that was about 1,500 to 2,000 words long, and it didn't need to be that long. We just did it because, we're longer than the other guy, so we're providing more info, so we have more keywords, and it's going to rank because it's longer. And then we just send a couple of backlinks at it, and we get more terms, and we get the result. But it provides a bad user experience sometimes because, as you said, a lot of people really don't read, especially when it comes to local. What they're going to do is they're going to skim. So they'll land on a page. They're going to skim the headings, so the big text. They're going to find really just a mention of price. That's what they're going for first. Or, okay, do I have a problem? Can I self-diagnose it? I'm not saying people aren't going to read, but they're going to skim to the section they want, read a little bit, and then they're going to check out the about page and your portfolio. Like that's how most people use websites. And we have all of this proof from looking at Google Analytics from over like hundreds of accounts.
Yeah.
That's always the path. They'll read a service page, read your about, check out your pictures, and then they'll contact you.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, I agree. if I'm looking for something specifically, software or something like that, one of the first things I look at is, can I even afford it?
Yeah, what does it cost? Yeah. Yeah, it's like I'm kind of warmed up. Like I
Yeah.
have an idea of what it does. I looked at the features list. What does it cost?
Yeah.
And a lot of companies don't put their pricing on their websites, and I think that's a mistake nowadays. Like I'm not saying you have to put like your price sheet on there, but
Right.
even if you give a range,
Right.
not only is that important because it's going to help answer the customer's question, but it pre-qualifies them.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the last thing you want is to have your sales guys talking to people that just aren't qualified.
Right.
Not a good use of their time.
Last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap this podcast up is the idea of educating the viewers and the listeners of the podcast. I mean, not of the podcast, but of people that in digital marketing, educating your audience.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't know, that happens a lot to us in the video world. It's like they don't really understand what goes into making a really good commercial or video or, I need this next week and, it's going to take 2 days. I'm going to take 2 days to shoot it. And we'd like an animation in there,
Yeah.
They have no clue what they're asking us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just the education side of it's really important.
It is. It's very important. I mean, the person doesn't have to necessarily know the ins and outs. I think that the concept is what's the most important.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we talk about SEO to someone, we can sum up SEO in one sentence. And that sentence is Google has one job, and that is to end your search. And that's all SEO is. Now, of course, you can unpack that for hours.
Yeah.
But Google wants to serve up the best result. So, and that's because people trust Google because it gives them great results. That's why everyone uses it. And they're clicking on the first, second, or third result. But if Google didn't serve great results, people wouldn't trust it. So Google has to protect their product. And so the only way they do that is by giving what they feel is the best result. So let's take that a step further and say, well, look at your website. Is that the best result?
For what?
Yeah, for what someone punched in. Yeah. Is that the best result? Be honest.
Yeah.
Is that the best result? And you may say, yeah, it is the best result. But, that's where you get into the analysis and like look through. But that's all they're wanting to do is serve up the best result for the term. And of course, like I said, it breaks down. But the education piece comes into, well, what are the characteristics of the best result? Why is it important to focus on this? What is put yourself in the customer's shoes. And that's a big component of it. Put yourself in the customer's shoes. If you were searching for this and you stumbled upon this website or you saw these reviews or you saw this versus what your competitors are doing, who are you going to reach out to?
Yeah.
It's so you just have to take yourself out of your own perspective for a little bit. Google's perspective, the customer's perspective. You have to consider all of those things. And that's where the education comes in truly, understanding what they see.
And I think most people, I say most people, but a lot of people get that backwards.
Mm-hmm.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I don't think we have it anymore, but on our web design page, we linked to a stat that talked about how 91% of all websites on the internet get no traffic from search engines.
Is that right?
91%.
Oh,
man. And so the phrase, if you build it, they will come, it doesn't always apply.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Most
always
of the
apply.
time it doesn't.
Yeah. The majority of the time. So yeah, it's true.
Well, this is our first one. We finished our
yeah.
first podcast. So great job. We're really excited to have everybody join us, and we're excited about. We've got a whole bunch of topics that we're going to be really hitting on. Honestly, if you have seen this podcast and you have a question or something you'd like to get some feedback on, I think we'd love to do something like that. And we're going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the two main ones from an audio standpoint, and then we'll be on YouTube as well. So we look forward to having you guys. Be sure to subscribe. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you for the next podcast.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.